Norlin wasn't always a billionaire. He'd grown up in a neighborhood where kids played in the streets until the sun vanished. His grind built Vextech, a global logistics empire. He had everything. A 25,000-square-foot home, 3 vacation properties, and a name respected in boardrooms from Zurich to Shanghai. But what he didn't have was what he needed most: joy in his son's eyes. 6-year-old Kieran was different after the accident. The car that ran a red light 3 years ago hadn't just taken his ability to walk unaided. It had taken his laughter, his spark, the fearless curiosity he once carried like armor. Doctors had repaired his bones. Therapists had worked on his balance. Trainers tried to help him stand again. But no one could fix what went missing behind his eyes: the joy, the spark. And Norlin, despite all his billions, felt powerless. So when his assistant booked a stay at the coastal La Valletta resort, supposedly the most private, exclusive, luxury healing escape on the eastern seaboard, he hadn't objected. Maybe a change of scenery would help Karen. Maybe it would help him too. He just hadn't expected her. Her name was Lania. She wasn't in a uniform that matched the crisp silver and white decor of the resort. She wore a plain black tee, her apron tied too tightly like she was always rushing. Her sneakers were worn, her curls tucked up in a bun she hadn't had time to perfect. She moved like someone with 5 tables and only 2 arms, and she smiled like she meant it. Norlin noticed her first when she dropped off the wrong smoothie at his cabana, berry banana instead of dragon fruit mango. She apologized so genuinely that he almost laughed. Kieran didn't react at all. "Sorry, Mr. Vexley," she said, eyeing his resort bracelet. "Let me get the right one." He waved her off. "It's fine." But she came back anyway with the correct smoothie and an extra cookie. "Some chefs think mango goes with everything," she joked, sliding the plate closer to Kieran, who sat silently beside his father. "That cookie's on the house. Just don't tell my manager." Kieran didn't say a word. He didn't look at her. But Norlin noticed Lania's eyes soften when she looked at him. Not with pity, not with fear, just warmth. A few minutes later, she was gone, running toward a poolside table where a guest had spilled something. Norlin almost forgot her. Almost. But then, something happened. The next morning, she was back. Different section, different outfit, same energy. And this time, Kieran looked up. Not for long. Just a moment. But long enough that Norlin nearly dropped his fork. She didn't notice. She was too busy explaining to an elderly couple that the chef was vegan today because he lost a bet. By day 3, Norlin started requesting a table in her section. He told himself it was because she was efficient, professional. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Kieran had started reacting, not speaking, but lifting his head, looking around, eating a little more, sleeping a little better. And Lania? She never asked questions, never pried, never even commented on Kieran's braces or the way Norlin had to lift him into chairs. But she started bringing small things: a hand-folded origami frog, a joke written on a napkin. Once a pair of red paper glasses she'd made from a cereal box. Kieran didn't wear them, but he held them in his lap the entire breakfast. Norlin had hired child psychologists, play therapists, even a performance artist once. None had gotten this reaction. But Lania? She wasn't even trying. On the 6th morning, Norlin waited for her at the table. But she didn't come. Instead, a tall man with polished shoes and a forced smile approached. "Welcome, sir. I'll be serving you today." Norlin didn't answer. Kieran looked down. That was the day Norlin asked the front desk for her schedule. When they said she'd swapped shifts to work a private evening event, he nodded, said nothing. But inside, he was confused. Why did he care this much? That night, he booked the same event. A family-friendly beachside dinner and dance, whatever that meant. He hadn't danced in 15 years. He almost backed out when he saw the setup. Twinkle lights, tiki torches, live acoustic music. Too normal. Too soft for someone who managed global freight contracts worth billions. But then he saw her, moving between tables with trays balanced on one hand, laughing with kids, helping an elderly man with his napkin. Kieran saw her too. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he tugged gently on his father's sleeve. Norlin looked down. Kieran pointed. To her. Norlin didn't say anything, just nodded. She noticed them a few minutes later and walked over with 2 lemonades and a smile. "Evening, gentlemen. Thought I might see you here." Kieran stared. Not away. Not down. At her. And then came the moment no one expected. A small group of kids had started dancing near the bonfire. A girl in a yellow dress was spinning with her dad. A boy in blue was trying to mimic an awkward shuffle. And Kieran, still seated, braces wrapped around his legs, watched them like he was remembering something. Lanaya knelt beside him. "You ever try that dance before?" she asked gently. Kieran didn't answer. She didn't push. But what she did next shocked everyone. She stood up and said, "I bet you know the first step, though." Then she danced it. Slow. Simple. Just a toe tap with a clap. Ridiculous, really. No rhythm, no flow. Just goofy enough to get a chuckle. Norlin stared, unsure what was happening. Then she did it again and again. Always watching Kieran, and that's when it happened. Kieran lifted his foot, just slightly, a little twitch, then again. Toe forward, then back. He clapped. Once. Norlin's heart nearly stopped. Lania smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. "See? Told you. Bet you could teach me the next step." And in front of 100 guests, a billionaire's son, silent, withdrawn, invisible for nearly 3 years, moved to the rhythm of a dance made up on the spot by a waitress who didn't care about wealth, title, or history. Guests clapped. A few cried. Norlin stood there, stunned. The boy who hadn't spoken in 2 years turned his head, looked at her, and whispered, "Again." Lanaya laughed softly. "All right then. Lead the way, partner." Norlin stepped back, emotions crashing over him like waves he couldn't stop. He couldn't remember the last time he cried. He didn't even think he could anymore. But standing there, watching his son take control of something, anything, he felt the cracks start to open. And yet, this was just the beginning. Because what Norlin didn't know, what no one at that dinner knew, was who Lanaya really was, and the story behind why she worked at a place like this. That part was still hidden, waiting. That night, Norlin lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the Ocean View suite. The moonlight spilled through the wide windows, but he barely noticed it. His mind replayed Kieran's small, shaky dance step over and over again, like a film on a loop. The look in his son's eyes, the flicker of joy, the ghost of confidence. He hadn't seen that in so long, but what haunted him even more was the girl. Lania. Who was she? She wasn't just another resort employee. That much was clear. She was too intuitive, too composed. And something about the way she looked at Kieran, like she wasn't surprised at all, kept circling in Norlin's mind. By morning, Norlin had made a decision. He was going to find out more. The next day, instead of requesting a table, he visited the staff wing of the resort, something guests never did. His name opened doors quickly. The manager, an older man named Sennett, seemed both flattered and nervous by the visit. "I hope everything has been to your satisfaction, Mr. Vexley." "It has," Norland replied, eyes sharp. "In fact, I'd like to offer one of your staff members something beyond this job." Sennett raised a brow. "The waitress from last night's dinner, Linnea. I want to speak to her." Sennett hesitated. "She's on a break, but I'll let her know you're—" "No," Norland interrupted. "I want to speak to her directly. Now." That was the thing about being wealthy. You stopped asking. You started expecting. 10 minutes later, Lania stood outside the resort garden, arms crossed, wearing the same black shirt and apron, hair slightly windblown from rushing. "You wanted to see me?" Norland nodded, gesturing to the bench near the path. "Just a moment of your time." She didn't sit, so he stood instead. "I watched you with Kieran last night," he began. "You got through to him in a way no one else has. I want to understand how." Her eyebrows lifted. "You think there's some trick to it?" "I think there's more to you than you let people see." Lania was silent for a beat. Then she smiled, but it wasn't the warm one from the dinner. This one was guarded. "I used to work with kids, before this." "Where?" "A nonprofit arts program in Lenfield. We taught movement and performance therapy. But funding ran out. Rent doesn't stop just because your job disappears, Mr. Vexley." There it was, a glimpse of her truth. "I want to fund it," Norland said without hesitation. "Or restart it. Whatever it takes. You helped my son. Let me help you." But instead of gratitude, she gave him something unexpected, a long, steady look. "Your son isn't a charity case, and I didn't do what I did to impress you." Norland froze. He wasn't used to being challenged. She continued, "You want to help? Be his dad, not his manager. Don't treat people like a problem you can solve with money." It hit like a slap, and somehow he knew she was right. That evening, he didn't sit at a table and wait for her. He sat with Kieran by the pool, just the two of them. They talked, or at least tried to. Kieran said a few words, smiled once. That was enough. But the more time they spent at the resort, the more Norland noticed the cracks in the perfection. Not with the resort. With Linnea. She worked double shifts. Never complained. But her sneakers were breaking at the seams. Her phone screen was shattered. She turned away once when a guest offered her a tip. Embarrassed, maybe. Or too proud. And then one night, Norland saw her arguing with someone outside near the parking area. A tall woman with wild red braids and fierce eyes. The argument was low and tense. Norland only caught a few words. "You can't keep avoiding it, Lonnie." "I said I'll figure it out, Talizi." "You've been saying that for months." Lania's hands were balled in fists. Norland didn't say anything. He just watched. The next morning, he asked his assistant back in the city to do a background search. Something felt off, not dangerous, just incomplete. When the report came back, it made Norland sit down. Her full name was Lania Grayson, 27, former director of a children's movement program in Lenfield. Parents deceased. One younger brother deceased. No criminal record. No lawsuits. But a recent foreclosure notice tied to her name, due in 30 days. He stared at the report for a long time. He had given bonuses larger than what she needed to save her home. But something told him that if he offered money outright, she'd never accept it. That's when he had an idea. He invited her to dinner. Not in the resort, not as a guest. He invited her to dine with him and Kieran, privately, in a quiet corner of the boardwalk. She hesitated, but eventually agreed. She showed up in a faded denim jacket and a long yellow skirt. "You don't have to do this," she said as he pulled out a chair. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." Kieran smiled at her as she sat down. She smiled back and tapped his glass gently with hers. "Cheers, champ." Over dinner, they talked. About everything and nothing. Linnea told him stories about the kids she used to teach, the dances they'd invent, the way movement helped them communicate when words failed. Norlin listened, and for once, he didn't think about company earnings or quarterly reports. When dessert came, Kieran had fallen asleep in the chair beside them, his head resting on a folded sweater. "I owe you a thank you," Norlin said quietly. "You don't owe me anything." "No, I do. You gave me back a piece of my son." There was a pause. Then softly she said, "You know what he needs? Not another therapist or treatment center. He needs someone who sees him." Norlin looked at her. "Like you do?" She gave him a tired smile. "I'm not special." He disagreed, but didn't say it. Then he asked carefully, "What if I created a foundation, funded by my company, focused on movement therapy for kids with physical or emotional trauma? Would you run it?" She froze. Her fork hovered above the table. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're wasting your gift bussing tables." Her eyes narrowed. "You think waiting tables is a waste?" "No," he said honestly. "But I think you're meant for more, and I think you know it too." She didn't say yes that night, but she didn't say no either. That weekend, Kieran asked to go to the bonfire again. This time, he brought a pair of paper glasses Linnea had made him earlier in the week. Norlin stood at the edge of the crowd as Kieran danced again, slow, awkward, but determined. Linnea watched from a distance, her eyes shining with something Norlin couldn't name. But before the song ended, Kieran turned to her and said clearly, "Dance with me." Linnea hesitated, then walked to him. They did the silly toe tap, the clap, and a spin she gently guided him through. And in that moment, something shifted. Not just in the boy, not just in the father, but in the woman too. Because while no one knew her full story, Norlin had a feeling it was far from over. And soon, he'd discover just how deep it went. The next morning, Norlin Vexley was on a mission. He didn't go to his usual cabana. He didn't check company emails or call into morning strategy sessions. He paced the wraparound balcony of the resort suite with a notebook in his hand, sketching out plans. Foundation structure, funding brackets, pilot programs, curriculum concepts. He couldn't stop thinking about it, not because of some PR opportunity or tax incentive. This was something real, something human, something that had reached inside him and peeled back the steel shell he'd spent years building. Linnea had done something no specialist or surgeon had been able to do, and it wasn't just about Kieran anymore. It was about every child who'd been lost in a system too focused on charts and not enough on people. He emailed his corporate lawyer, his COO, his head of PR. "Block time next week. I want to discuss forming a fully independent, privately funded foundation focused on movement-based therapeutic care for children. No press, no brand tie-in, just do it." He paused before hitting send, then added, "And I want one woman running it." Her name is Lania Grayson. That night, he handed her the official offer letter. She didn't accept right away. Lania read every word, her brows furrowed. "This is..." Everything. Norlin nodded. Office, funding, creative control, build it however you want. I'll handle the red tape. But she looked unsure. I don't know if I can lead something this big. Norlin studied her. You already are. You just don't see it yet. She set the letter down slowly. Can I think about it? Of course, he said. But there's one more thing I think you should know. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the foreclosure notice. Her name on it. The date circled in red. Her face drained of color. You looked me up. I had to know what was holding you back, he said calmly. I'm not judging you, but I'm not going to stand by and watch someone like you lose their home while saving lives. She clenched her jaw, trying not to look away. You don't understand. That house, it's all I have left of my family. I do understand, he said, and I'm not here to take it away. I'm here to help you keep it. No strings. But she didn't thank him. She didn't cry. She just stood up, quietly, and walked away. That night, she didn't come to work. Norlin waited. Kieran waited. But her section remained empty. The next day, she didn't show up either. And that's when Norlin started to worry. On day 3, the manager, Sennett, finally admitted she hadn't checked in. She'd taken a personal day without notice. Norlin didn't hesitate. He called the number from the report his assistant pulled. Straight to voicemail. He tried again, then again. On the 5th call, it rang, and she answered. Mr. Vexley, she said. Her voice was tired. I'm worried about you. You don't need to be. Where are you? I'm figuring things out. Lania, he said, voice steady. Let me help. Silence. Then finally she said, there's something you don't know about me. And before I say yes to anything, you deserve to hear it. They met later that night, off-resort, in a small diner tucked behind a row of shuttered beach shops. It was quiet. Just 2 other customers and a sleepy waitress wiping down counters. She sat across from him, hoodie pulled over her hair, hands curled around a chipped mug of tea. My brother, she began, eyes focused on the steam. His name was Taryn. He was everything to me. We grew up with nothing, but he was the kind of kid who could make you laugh in the middle of a storm. He had cerebral palsy, severe, but he never let it define him. Norlin listened, not interrupting. When he was 14, he wanted to dance. Everyone said it was impossible, but I believed in him. I created these simple routines, just little hand and foot moves. He'd practice for hours. It gave him joy. She paused, breathing deep. 3 years ago, he died. Complications from a surgery. He was 17. Her voice cracked slightly. I buried him in that house I'm about to lose. Norlin felt the weight of it all hit him. He's the reason I do what I do. The reason I started the movement program. The reason I knew what your son needed. Because I saw the same pain in his eyes I saw in Taryn's after a bad day. She finally looked up. So when you say you want to build something, I want to believe you. But I need to know it's real. I can't be a puppet or a face for another rich man's guilt. Norlin nodded slowly. It's not about guilt. It's about change. Real, lasting change. I can give you the tools, but I need you to build it. She stared at him for a long time, and then slowly she reached into her bag and pulled out the signed offer letter. I added one condition, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You fund at least 10 scholarships per year. No strings, no branding, just access for kids who wouldn't otherwise get it. Norlin smiled. Done. She leaned back. Then I'm in. The next few weeks moved fast. Linnea gave her 2 weeks' notice at the resort. Kieran, now asking for her by name each morning, made her a goodbye card with stickers and crayon scribbles. Norland flew her out to the city to meet his team. Some looked surprised when he introduced her as the new director of the Vexley Movement Foundation, but none questioned it. By the end of the month, she had keys to her new office, a budget that made her eyes water, and a clear path forward. And Kieran? He walked, unaided, 4 full steps across Norland's living room a week later. The first person he called was Linnea. She answered on the first ring. "He did it," Norland said, his voice trembling. "He really did it." She cried quietly on the other end. He always could. He just needed someone to believe in the rhythm inside him. 3 months later, the first program launched in Lenfield, in a converted warehouse that once held factory tools but now echoed with music, laughter, and the sound of dancing feet, some clumsy, some offbeat, but every single one filled with purpose. Kieran was the foundation's first official student, and Norland? He wasn't just funding it. He was there, every week, not as a billionaire, not even as a CEO, just as a father. One who'd learned that sometimes the biggest change doesn't come from a breakthrough in a boardroom or a billion-dollar deal. Sometimes it comes from a single dance step, led by a little boy who once forgot how to smile, and a waitress who never forgot what it meant to believe in someone no one else saw.